You know, sometimes fate, or call it what you will, has an interesting way of aligning, and it's almost like the stars align in a way sometimes that just makes things beyond ridiculous. That just turns things into just almost like divine comedies, to put it one way. Because guess what happened? You're not going to believe this. I didn't believe it was real when I first saw it. When I first saw this, I thought it was just internet rumor. I actually had to look into it to even believe this was happening. All right, folks. So this case is about Stormy Daniels. Like, when you get to the roots of it, this is about payments made to Stormy Daniels as hush money, and that's the whole base of it. Guess what happened literally the same day that Trump has read his charges? The exact same day that Trump has read his charges, Stormy Daniels just got ordered by a different court to pay even more of Trump's legal fees because she lied. The entire basis of all of this is a lie, and Stormy Daniels just got ordered to pay an additional $121,962.56 in attorney fees, in addition to the roughly $500,000 that she already owes him. Not to mention the fact that her former lawyer, Avenatti, is in prison for extorting her. And so the entire thing is an absolute mess. Not to mention the fact that Cohen, who is also tied in with her, is also guilty as a serial liar. And even the fact that he himself has these issues and is trying to get off the hook of being a convicted serial liar and coming out and trying to, again, he's the star witness against Trump. It's like the end of the show, and they're like, folks, that's it. The ship is sinking. Send in the clowns, because that's all we got. Send in the clowns. Let me show you. Eric Trump was the first person to tweet it out. He said this: breaking, the Ninth Circuit just awarded Trump $121,962.56 in attorney fees from Stormy Daniels. Order just released. This is in addition to the roughly $500,000 she already owes him. Let me show you a story on this. Fox News had it. Trump awarded nearly $122,000 in attorney fees from Stormy Daniels. Former President Donald Trump on Tuesday, while he's facing these charges, ironically about this, you can't make this up, folks, about this, talk about fruit of the poisonous tree, right? Was awarded nearly $122,000 in attorney fees from Stormy Daniels, the porn star at the center of hush money payments during the 2016 campaign. And frankly, we shouldn't even call it hush money payments, because she's having to pay him now for lying. And it says further in, Trump attorney Harmeet Dillon of the Dillon Law Group shared a copy of the order, tweeting, "Congratulations to President Trump on his final attorney fee victory in his favor this morning." Dillon, the attorney, said her firm has collectively obtained more than $600,000 in attorney fees in the former president's favor on the, quote, meritless litigation initiated by Stormy Daniels. It was all fake. Fake as determined by court of law. Fake in the books. Fake written, agreed upon, and she has to pay a lot of money because it was that fake to Donald Trump. And based on this exact same thing, they're trying to prosecute Trump. And Fox News notes the award came literally, folks, hours after former President Trump pleaded not guilty in New York City after being charged with 34 felony counts of falsifying business records in the first degree. Now, what is fruit of the poisonous tree? What does that mean? The tree is the initial charge. The tree is the thing they go after you with, right? The tree is the idea that Stormy Daniels accuses Trump of sexual misconduct. Stormy Daniels says this. Trump says, fine, geez, I'll pay her this is the allegation at least, pay her. I don't want to deal with it. I'm campaigning. People make false claims all the time. They're trying to get money out of me. Just pay her. Let's be done with it. Thing comes back and haunts him. The foundation of all this was a false allegation, right? False allegation. She continues on it, blah, blah, blah. Later history, finally, it turns out she lied about it. And she, of course, gets found guilty, and that has to pay Trump a lot of money. The initial tree that launched the other issues, that launched the hush payments, that launched the accusations that he had an affair with a porn star, all these things basically growing out of that initial fake claim. What happens to it? It means that all the things that came about through that are now the fruits on that tree. And if the tree itself is deemed to have been done in a falsified way, if there were legal acts that took place in the forming of it, all those fruits are called fruits of the poisonous tree, and all of them have to be discarded. I'll tell you a story because, as a journalist, I only went to community college. I didn't really do much college, but I did take some journalism classes. And one thing you're taught in school as a journalist is this. The nature of how you do your investigations and how you collect your evidence. If you violate the law or violate someone's rights in the collection of evidence, the evidence collected through those methods cannot be used in court. In fact, you even risk ruining the case if you do that. There's one case that I was taught. There were journalists who were investigating a murder. And the individual they were investigating, this is, of course, a separate issue. This is not related to Trump in any way, right? This is the story I was taught in journalism school. Right? So there were journalists investigating a murder. The individual they were investigating goes out onto his balcony, and he has a phone call. Now, journalists, especially video journalists, have long-range microphones, and so you can typically capture audio from a distance sometimes. The journalist, seeing this individual step out onto his balcony, right, who's being investigated for murder, is on his cell phone, and because they have a long-range mic, they're able to pick up the audio of his conversation. And in the audio of his conversation, he admits to committing murder. The journalists, they think they have the story of the century. This guy being investigated for murder just admitted it on a phone call. And we got it on, not me, but these journalists, they got it on record. They recorded it. Of course, they air it. They make a big deal about it. But what happens? Because of some of the protocols in the particular state, which you talk about party consent. You have one-party consent or two-party consent. In some states, if you surreptitiously record somebody, or if you record them in general, you need to ask their permission to use the recording. You cannot, in some states you can. In New York City, for example, there's what they call one-party consent. So I could put a hidden camera on me and record somebody, and the recording is deemed legal evidence, right? So some states have that. Some states do not have that. You have to have the consent of the individual, otherwise they regard it as like it's a violation of a person's rights, of their privacy. Because it was one of those states where you had two-party consent, and they did not have permission to record that individual surreptitiously on his own property. Right? It might have actually been a property thing. The court could not use that recording. And because the journalists did that, because they did that and they recorded him surreptitiously on his own property using those means, the entire case had to be thrown out. Even though the guy admitted to murder, the entire case had to be thrown out. That's the way the legal system works. And keep in mind, I would argue, geez, if the guy murdered somebody, he probably should go to prison, geez. But keep in mind, this is meant to protect you. This is meant to prevent things like entrapment. For example, if the police, hypothetically speaking, were to hold a door open for you and say, "Why don't you go inside?" and you go inside and you violate trespassing laws, and they try to indict you on trespassing laws, hypothetically speaking. The entire thing would be thrown out because that would be fruit of the poisonous tree, or in that case, entrapment. You cannot use illegal means, in other words, to obtain evidence. You cannot use illegal means to open up a case. You cannot use illegal means to go down different avenues of investigation. Because anything that would come about, even if legitimate, through the initial violation of the law or the initial falsehood, would be tainted, poisoned through that initial act. Are you getting it? And so with the Stormy Daniels case, it's all, in my opinion at least, fruit of the poisonous tree. Based, if not on this, the fact that Alvin Bragg's own department poisoned the trees, poisoned the fruit from the tree, so to speak, because you had his own prosecutor go and write a dang book about the ongoing investigation, then do a media tour. Interestingly, actually, the same thing could taint the Georgia case, and it's funny that people are noting that about the Georgia case, where Trump's being accused of interfering with the elections. It's the same thing where you had individuals doing media tours on an ongoing investigation, and they're noting that as well, in the same sense as this, could actually get the whole thing thrown out. Again, based on that concept of fruit of the poisonous tree. You can't do that stuff. It violates the basic standards of rule of law in the United States. A rule taken so seriously, that even a guilty person could be forced to be let off on charges regardless of evidence, because protecting the integrity of America's legal system is more important than one single case. At least that's what I was taught. And frankly, based on, the history of prosecutions, that's what has been practiced in American court of law for as long as it's been around. Which is crazy that, bringing us to the Trump case, they're going against so much precedent. They're changing so many laws and doing things in underhanded ways to such a large degree that I think it's going to be impossible to not view this as politicized justice. And again, as I have shown you throughout this episode, even a lot of people on the left agree with that. Even a lot of people on the left are seeing this as a type of politicized justice. There's no getting away from it. And based on that, I'll repeat what I said from the get-go with this. It looks like this is going to help Trump. This is probably going to solidify Trump's victory, regardless of how the Biden administration thinks it might split people on the fence. Because the media, the news outlets, are going to be what forms the opinions of the public. And anybody reading Fox News, New York Post, Wall Street Journal, the Republican voting base, is now going to understand this. Anybody watching CNN is going to understand this. And anybody even reading a lot of the other leftist news outlets, which are also, in not all of them, but many of them, are painting it in a very similar way. This is demonstrating to the American people across party lines and even among the establishment, which is not necessarily for Trump, convincing them, I think, based on the reporting, that this is just devastation of America's really just legal integrity.